All right, we are live, Nils. Um,
Go.
I doing all kinds of things, and it takes me like 35 seconds to figure out how to make all the buttons work. Hey, man, thanks for joining me on my this silly green room show that I'm doing.
Sure.
And, uh, you know, how long? When was the last time I saw you?
Um, wow.
It was like almost
Before, yeah, probably 2010, 2009. We came over to your place, your
yeah, just
beautiful place with before the pond was in the backyard.
yeah, yeah. It was just grass then,
Yeah.
and then the grass died, and so I put the pond in.
Yeah.
And then that you moved to back north just shortly after the last time I saw you.
2011.
And so you seeing it on your Facebook page there?
Yeah.
Are you seeing it? Okay, cool. All right. So um when you went back to Watsonville?
Actually, that's where I grew up.
Okay.
Sort of. That's where I was born. I
Yeah.
didn't quite grow up there. More like Aptos. But yeah, I grew up in Aptos. There was great music at the high school. That's kind of what got me going into jazz. But then moved to LA to go to Cal State Northridge, and ended up, the idea was to go to school and then move back to the Bay Area, to Santa Cruz area, and I ended up staying for 32 years.
32 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
just a short little stay.
a short little stint. So
Yeah,
so when I met you in 81,
81, right.
you must have just graduated from college or
I
something.
hadn't graduated. No, so I moved there. It was to be my third year in college. I went to junior college in Santa Cruz area, Cabrillo College, and for two and a half years, I had done a cruise ship gig during part of it, so it extended my schooling a little bit, and but then moved to LA in 1979 for the fall semester of Cal State Northridge, and that's when it was the heyday of music departments in jazz bands, and in those days there were 45 trombone majors that year. I mean, that's how big the music department was.
Yeah, is that
Uh,
what you started playing trombone?
no, no, no. But I was a bass player and a tuba player at the time. But I'm
Okay.
just saying that, I mean, to have 45 trombone majors, you have to have a really big music department.
Right, because usually there's only one trombone player. So if there's 45, yeah.
Yeah. And, like Eric Jorgensen and guys like that were going to that school. And Gordon Goodwin had just graduated the year before from that school. So they were putting out some good musicians. And so I went to school there, stayed for the music for 32 years, and then 2011 moved to San Jose. So I live in San Jose now,
Yes.
and
Okay.
yeah. So and I'm doing a lot of teaching. I work for a school district and teach music, and then play. And that's what I was doing. I did that for the last 14 years. I was in LA, played music and taught for LA Unified. And before that, I was just playing and gigging and touring and doing circus bands with you,
So, you
and
get
driving up to the Bay Area. And then, I tell, hey, Jeff, man, I'm going up to the Bay Area. And you say, hey, you want to play the top of the mark? Remember
yeah,
that? And
yeah.
I would come up and visit my folks and go play up in San Francisco.
So that I remember playing at the top of the mark with you.
Yeah.
Man, I mean that some of those years are kind of like blurry to me now.
Yeah. They all kind of run together.
So what I'm wondering though is when you went to school, and I know that Cal State LA, Cal State Northridge, both of those schools had great music programs.
Yeah,
And
Long Beach, Cal State, Long
right,
Beach. Yeah, because you were
it,
at Cal State LA, right?
me?
Or yeah, were
No,
you there, or you just were hanging
no.
out with the guys who went there?
Yeah, just the guys from the circus. I
Yeah,
think John Worley and Tom went there.
yeah,
Um, uh, I those are the only two guys that I know. But between you guys that went to those schools, lots of guys.
yeah.
Um, and Eric, did you go to? Were you in school with Eric?
I think he graduated the year before I got there. So, but he was still in and around. I mean, he was hanging out with people that were still there. His roommate, Jeff Enlow, remember Jeff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, we had parties at their house all the time, and we all hung out with all those guys. And I didn't really get to know Eric though, really until Circus days when we
Yeah,
did Circus Vargas.
yeah. That you also did another circus. You did what
Bentley Brothers Circus.
Bentley?
That was in the 1985. Um,
Man, and
I,
how
I
long did
did
you do
that.
that?
Uh, it was like it was a um, kind of a they did a month or 6 weeks in California in the springtime, and then went to the East Coast, starting in like the Boston area, and did New England and some of the East Coast. We went to Delaware, but it was no tent. It was outdoor, open air, and like high school football fields or um, uh, fairground grandstands. And so we'd be out there with a you know a tarp hanging off the side of a semi truck, and that was the back of our bandstand was the truck, and the tarp was the top of the band. We'd be on 6 pieces of plywood painted red with a logo of the circus, and right in front of us was the axe. So
Oh, and it would out in the sun and
well,
what?
yeah, it was but it was kind of like the same schedule as Vargas,
Yeah.
except night shows, 8 o'clock show, 4 and 8, that type of stuff. So it
Oh,
was, it would be brutal if the sun was setting and we were staring into it and still, having to look at the axe through the blinding sun. But so parts of it were great because you're kind of out under the stars, sort of, and beautiful weather. When it
yeah.
was bad was like July in Vermont, when it's high humidity, high heat, and high mosquitoes, and you're
Man.
outside with lights all over the place, right?
Yeah. So, I don't know if anybody really understands what it's like to do a circus gig. Be it, I mean, it's in many ways, it's kind of brutal. It kind of beats you up because
Yeah, it's very brutal.
you don't
Yeah,
really get days off. You're always working and moving and
yeah.
and it's a couple of hours of straight playing with no breaks. And
Especially for the drummer. Like, I mean, you were working constantly because
right,
when the music stopped, it was because you're having to do a drum roll or a cymbal crash, and then you go on to the next tune.
the drummer actually has a lot of stuff to do on
Yeah,
circuits, especially drum rolls.
yeah, yeah.
So uh now, but I want to ask, when you went to school, did you intend to be an educator to
Not at
teach?
all. When I was moved to LA, here was my goal as an idealist college student. What the idea was to play in the LA Phil on string bass and do jazz gigs aside from that. So the LA Phil never happened, but the jazz gigs did.
Jazz gigs?
But I took
And
lessons from some guys in the LA Phil. So
okay, do you really like classical music and that sort of stuff? Was
yeah, well, it was a big part of my upbringing because my dad was a violinist and a music teacher also. But in the Santa Cruz area, when I was growing up, he was a concertmaster of the Santa Cruz Symphony. And before I was around, he was in the San Jose area, and he was in the symphony there and concertmaster. And Um, my cousin is the librarian for the San Francisco Symphony, and
Really?
she went to San Jose State, and she had a history teacher, a music history teacher. She went as a music major, a piano major, and she had a music history teacher that my dad had like 25 years before that. And it was kind of a private joke between her and this teacher, and he said, "Oh, your uncle he was a great musician. Of course I remember Craig Johnson," and the funny story was that there was a music history test, and my cousin couldn't remember the answer to the question, who was the greatest violinist of this era, like in the 1800s, and the answer was supposed to be Paganini, and she couldn't remember it. She blanked out on the test, and so she wrote my dad's name. But the funny part was the girl sitting next to her didn't remember either, copied her, and didn't realize it was an inside joke between the teacher and her.
Oh no!
So she was kind of busted.
Yeah, that would get you busted.
Yeah. So my original influence was my dad as a music teacher, and just growing up in music and classical music. My brother and I would go to the symphony rehearsals, and we just sit in the audience, and my mom would go shopping, and we'd just sit there and wait for the rehearsal to be finished, and we had to be quiet and just listen to Beethoven or Vivaldi or whatever it was being rehearsed. So that was kind of the upbringing.
Did you get a lot of music history from growing up around that, or with a lot of different?
Some, not a whole lot. I mean, I got more in college, of course, but just those names were, at a 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Those, David Oistrakh on violin, Isaac Stern. Those were just like household names to us because that was what we'd be listening to on the record player, and so, yeah.
And what got you into jazz?
Well, early on, my aunt, my dad's sister, got him this album called Dizzy Rollins and Stitt, and it's been released. It's got a different name. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a different name for that same album. And it doesn't have all the same songs on it. It's slightly different. But I had listened to that, and I liked everything except there was kind of a pensive song, melancholy sounding, called Con Alma, a Dizzy Gillespie song. And Dizzy played a harmon mute on it, and it was really out of tune because a harmon mute was out of tune. And to me, it kind of sounded sinister as a youngster, but my dad got that in 1963 as a Christmas present. So that was kind of the first jazz I heard, was this Sonny Rollins, Sonny Stitt, and Dizzy Gillespie. And I didn't really appreciate listening to it until I got into high school. That's when I really started listening to jazz. My high school band director, who came in my second year of high school, he had been in the Army with Bill Berry, who had played with Count Basie's band and Duke Ellington's band, and it was a trumpet player, actually a cornet player. And being friends, this guy Bill Berry had a band called the LA Big Band, and it was all these guys who had been in Basie's band and Duke Ellington's band, and he brought them up to my high school in Aptos, up in Santa Cruz County, and so we get to hang out with these guys. The rhythm section was Jake Hanna, Dave Frischberg, Leroy Vinegar, and Herb Ellis. That was the rhythm section. And pretty amazing guys to listen to. There was Jack Sheldon, Lou Mitchell, Gene Go, Cat Anderson on trumpets. Just amazing trumpet section. It was quite an education. And then he brought them up every year, and they do clinics. So I would be sitting, like 8 feet away from Cat Anderson, showing how he plays his stuff on the trumpet, or Leroy Vinegar walking a bass line. And so it was pretty. That's really what got me into jazz, was that my high school band director.
Well, that made me think of an album that I used to listen to. And it was the Hannah Fontana Big Band.
Yeah,
Man,
that was great band.
And Jake Hanna's feel was, man, it was smooth.
Yeah, and he always had that upside down or that China symbol, with that really dark sound, and he would write on that and just change the whole color of the band.
Yeah.
And I love Jake Hanna's playing.
Yeah. The LA Big Band was around for a number of years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. They made a couple albums that were kind of not widely distributed, but yeah, they were around. They played at all the clubs, Dante's and Carmelo's and all those places.
Carmelo, that's the one that I've been trying to think of forever. Carmelo's.
Yep.
Yes. So
I have a Carmelo's music stand.
Really?
Yeah, it has Carmelo stenciled on it from Carmelo's.
Oh man. Well, so.
But I didn't really steal it.
It just ended. Somebody picked it up and said, "Oh, this must be your stand," and put it in your car.
I worked there after it was not Carmelo's anymore, and somebody else owned it. I'm not going to say whose name it was, but there was it was a gig, kind of a cabaret gig with singer in the rhythm section, and we got paid. We played like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you get paid the next week. And we ended up not getting paid for weeks and weeks. And the place went under, and he owed the local tax board money and the lending company's money. And so he owed me $800. So I figured I'm going to take a stand light and a music stand from Carmelo's. So it was an $800 music stand.
Oh. Wait, you got a souvenir out of it.
Yeah.
Anything that's kind of a cabaret.
Yeah.
When I don't know of too many good stories about musicians getting paid for those kinds of gigs.
Yeah. Kind of sad.
So let me ask you, when you then moved to LA, and did you ever get a play in the LA Big Band? Did you ever sub in that and play with?
Oh, no. That was, there was a band at what was it called? City College of Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Downtown. Woody James ran a big band there. And it was a lot of professional musicians, studio guys who would come in there to keep their chops up. And Mel Wanzo was a trombone player who was in Basie's band. And he called the guys who had done all those gigs and who were in that LA band champions, because they had paid their dues. They had played in those road, Ellington and Basie and those kind. And so I wasn't a champion at that time to play in that band. Those are the kind of guys that I wanted to be like. So, and I would go and hear them. So, no, I never got a chance to play in that.
Well, I never really got to experience the LA scene, because after I got off the Circus, as you know, I went to San Francisco.
Sure.
And,
yeah.
The thing that I missed was all of those hanging out in all those clubs, to be around all those guys, going down to the Union Hall. If I'm not mistaken, what people would tell me, if you come to LA, you got to go down and hang out at the music hall and get in the rehearsal bands. And
I did that a lot. Yeah.
And that's a lot. That's how a lot of guys got gigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
bands would rehearse there. People would sub in those bands, and you'd meet a lot of different guys, gals doing that. And I played in a band, a guy who wrote music for colleges, but he had top players in his band, Steve Spiegel, and we did a regular rehearsal every Monday for a certain part of a season, and then the rest of the time he'd be out on the road selling his stuff to high schools and colleges. It was pretty difficult music. A lot of time change stuff and different odd meters and, sophisticated stuff. But the the way the setup was for the band was that it was a long, narrow room. The trumpets would be at the short end, facing the room, and the saxes and the trombones would be in front of the trumpets, and then the saxes would face the rhythm section on the long end. And
Okay.
so straight across from me was Pete Chrisley.
Oh man.
And so it was guys like that. Kim Richmond was playing lead alto in that band a lot, and so
Yeah.
there were some amazing players in that band.
Those, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but a lot of those guys were a Tonight Show. They were doing the Tonight Show and stuff. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And I remember there was a trumpet player named George Graham, and he would do that, or sometimes also do that. City College at L.A. He did that big band also. And so, I remember some younger guy like me would when I was back in my college days or just out of college, asked him, "What are you doing playing in this band?" He said, "I got to keep my chops up, and there's no better way to keep my chops up than playing with other people. You
right.
can practice. Of course, you practice on your own, but if you're playing with other people, then it's a whole different method of playing."
Yeah, and I don't want to leave this topic, but it's going to be difficult for people now, especially kids, when trying to learn, because you got to play with people.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing that is just what I'm sort of missing and feeling, the lost art of big band. And in those days, especially, a lot of TV show themes and movies always have had pretty big bands, but the TVs and TV show themes and the big bands and stuff, it was a style, and there were still lots of that stuff happening, and you could see clubs.
Definitely.
And being able to experience that and go to you. How many big bands are there rehearsing now? I mean,
the Union probably not right now, none.
Well, not now, but I mean before.
But yeah, I think they were still playing. The Union's moved. It was in Hollywood. Now it's moved to Burbank. The LA Musicians Union. It's in Burbank now.
It's in Burbank?
Yeah, they moved 2 years ago, I think.
Oh.
And they got a facility. I guess it was, the rent was cheaper than where they were in Hollywood. But they have rehearsal facilities there also. I haven't been there because I've been out of LA since they moved. But I'm assuming people are still playing there.
Well, let me ask you too, though, because in the 80s was a big transition time for clubs. You got all the big bands and stuff, but what do they call it? All the progressive jazz and and the smooth jazz and all that kind of stuff.
The fusion and all that stuff.
Yeah. That was really kind of popping early 80s to the end of 80s, and where all of those clubs, I think when we were on the Circus, we could go to Dante's and see, Bunny Brunel and,
Yeah. I think we did. I remember that.
Yeah, right. It was
Alpha Zuni
and Tom Breckline.
Yeah.
You could walk and then just sit right next to him. I mean, you can't do that. That the only place that you can still do that is the Baked Potato.
That's really close. To a certain extent, Catalina's.
Yeah, they've been having. They still do it. Yeah, but those are only two places.
Yeah,
that are still kind of going.
Yeah.
Well,
I think in the Valley, in the San Fernando Valley, Charlie O's maybe still going. I'm not sure.
No, Charlie O's is closed. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, there's nothing. And the oh God, I always forget the room, comeback room or whatever, that the write-off room was a place. Oh, well, there's Herb Alpert's club is still going.
And the place on top of Beverly Glen, I think, Isn't
Yeah,
that
that's Herb
vibrato?
Alpert's
And
vibrato.
that's Herb Alpert's? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess they still kind of do some stuff, but
There's a
it's
couple
not,
places.
yeah,
It's not
it's
like it
not,
was.
no,
Yeah.
no, not like the baked potato is the only place that's still small quarters where you could walk in and I went to see uh Marvin Smitty Smith play,
Sure.
and it was I got to sit in the chair right next to the drums, you know,
Yeah.
and sit and have my soda and my baked potato and sit and literally almost reach out and hit him while he was playing. It was that close.
Yeah. Sure.
And for a drummer to be able to sit that close to another drummer and watch him, especially somebody that is that good.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, that with the COVID thing is going to be really hard because you can't get close to people like that anymore.
Right. Right.
So I mean, that's a whole different thing that we're up against.
Yeah.
In the future. So the one thing that I always lost touch with when I moved to San Francisco, though, was until I moved back down here and reconnected with you and Eric and everything. And I'm not really sure what all happened between the 20 years in between there. So what led you to start teaching?
Well, I graduated from college. I was doing some gigs around, lots of different things around. Actually, no, I didn't graduate. That was later. So this is how I got on the circus. I had done my spring semester and my fall semester. No, I'm sorry, 79 fall semester, and then the spring semester, 80 fall semester, and then it was January. They called it intersession, and I was supposed to go the next semester, but money was tight, and I had to choose to pay rent or to pay tuition. So I chose rent.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was at home, and I can kind of picture the moment. I got this call, and hi, is this Nils Johnson? Yeah. Hi, this is Tom Pollitzer. Hi. Yeah, you don't know me, but you were recommended by, I don't even know who recommended me, but I have a gig, and we need a bass player, and I was wondering if you're interested. I said, how much does it pay? And he told me how much it paid. I said, I'll take it.
Sure.
He said, do you want to know what it is? Because he hadn't said what it was yet. He just said, I have a gig, and here's the amount of money.
Yeah. No, don't tell him what it is. Don't tell him. Just get him here first.
And he said, well, it's Circus Vargas. I said, okay. What do I do? And so it was, I'm just blanking on her name.
Lynn
Keller was
right.
was the bass player. And so I think you guys were out. You were doing it at that time, right?
Yeah, I did it for a while. The thing is, I left for a couple of months, and I don't know whether you started before I left. I think you started before I left, and then Kent came and took over for a couple of months.
I can't remember who was playing. I guess it wasn't you. Maybe it was Jim.
Jim Miller subbed for a while for Kent, and Jim both did it while it was in LA.
Okay. So that must have been who it was, because it was out of his side of town in San Bernardino, I think, somewhere out there.
Yeah.
And that was right when I was at the beginning of me learning the LA freeway system and how bad it was to go east in the afternoon. Like, I had never really gone out that way. I had no call to do that. So I learned the LA system, freeway system very quickly, and how bad it was. In one direction, going to the gig was terrible. Coming home, it was a breeze. So that's how that all started. And it was Tom that called me, and it was Tom, and I think John Worley was still doing it,
right?
And Steve Curl and Lewis maybe started right then or just after. I think he might have replaced John.
Yeah. And then
Eric Jorgensen and Jim Norton was doing it.
Right.
And
What,
Ed
Ed Harris was still
Ed
playing.
on guitar, yeah,
Yeah.
no
Ed was
keyboard,
great. Man, what
yeah,
a band. It really was a great band.
yeah. And I remember after a month of playing that much every day on electric bass, even electric bass, and I had been practicing 4 hours a day on string bass for college, right?
Right.
But playing that much every day, I my hand hurt opening doorknobs. You know, I feel like I got used to it. It really is what kind of thrust me into the next level of playing for me.
Right. You know, there's a couple of things about those days that stick out in my mind. The
Yeah.
first thing is walking up to the bandstand and seeing you stand with your bare feet. I swear, like a bunch of times you wouldn't play with shoes on, and me either.
Or flip flops. Yeah.
Flip flops, or yeah. I mean, it was because it was brutally hot
Yeah.
on the bandstand there.
Yeah.
So
Especially in the Midwest where it was hot and humid, you know.
right. So the other thing that I remember is we got tired of riding in the RV and we all started driving in our own cars
Uh-huh.
and CB radios
Yeah. Right.
and driving all over and talking to each other. And then the I think one of the craziest things that you and I did,
Yeah.
I know you we were in Louisiana and it was foggy and we were driving without our headlights on.
Yeah. We did that a couple of times. I remember in Iowa somewhere driving, it was a moonlit night,
Yeah.
straight road, and you had that Chevy truck, I think, Chevy Love pickup. Was that what it was? Yeah.
Yep.
And we turned our lights off.
You had your white van?
Yeah. Yeah. I never did the RV thing. That's my first car I bought was to do that gig, that camper van.
Wow, man. Yeah. I mean, that was absolutely nuts. Some of the stuff we did, man.
That was great memories. You know, there was nothing like it. For all of us at those ages, just kind of footloose and fancy free, literally. Just driving across country.
Yeah, it was pretty bizarre. In many ways. I mean, it was fun, the bonding we did as musicians, but some of the craziness with the characters around the circus.
Yeah,
was that's a whole show in itself.
Yeah, the guys at that time, we didn't call them homeless. They were hobos, I guess, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, the carnies. Yeah,
carnies, but they would be, you'd see them thumbing a ride on the on ramp, and then the next thing you know, that they're working in the show.
Yeah, right. Well, the other thing that was really interesting is what I remember. One of these guys' names was Jimmy. You remember Jimmy?
Yeah, I remember Jimmy.
And the police showed up one day and just took him. And I think it was him, or maybe it was somebody else. Maybe it was Yukon, that guy.
Yeah.
But somebody, apparently he'd been wanted for something in a bunch of different states. And what I think we discovered is that some of those guys would just hide out on the circus. It was a way to be off the grid.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
And the one thing that I think on road gigs, especially on cruise ships, because you did some cruise ships, when you're doing those gigs, and even on a road gig, I think when you're doing them, everything else, all the rest of the world sort of disappears, and you end up being this tiny, in this little world of, there's nothing else.
Yeah. What's happening in the news doesn't really matter a little bit, but not, you're not at home. You're not getting, it was before cell phones. I was just telling my son tonight or my kids tonight that, I thought back then, wouldn't it be great if there was some sort of phone that you could take with you and you could just talk with like an antenna?
Right.
They should make them for people like us, not for the rich people. Those car phones that people, you remember the antennas that stick out the windows,
Yeah.
But
Hey, so
Yeah.
do you know Tracy Rose?
Yeah.
Yes, she's been tuning in, and she just said, "I'll never forget."
Tracy Rhodes is a drummer, and my dad taught him drums in junior high.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He lives in Santa Rosa area now, I think.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just said, wishing you the best and
Oh, cool.
carry on in your music. Nice.
Thanks.
Yeah. So anyway, so back off the circuit, there were just so many fascinating aspects of that entire gig. And but the funniest thing though was that driving with no lights on and just doing that
Yeah.
stuff.
It wasn't very far. I must admit, you and I were both like freaked out a little bit to do it very far.
Yeah, it's a little scary. It's like, well, what could we get
Maybe
in trouble?
20 seconds.
Yeah.
30 seconds. It seemed like an hour.
Right. And
Yeah.
So anyway, let's jump back to what got you into school, though. I mean, that's we took a side. I took you into the world of circus for a minute, but you were telling me how you got into teaching school.
Oh, teaching school. So I had left to do that gig on the circus, and I had really a semester and a half to finish my degree, a year and a half. And I told my counselor, I said, I'm just doing this gig up until next fall, and I'll be back. And he was a kind of a wise, lots of experienced counselor, musician. He taught music history and stuff, and history of jazz. And he said, "You're not going to be back." I said, "Oh, no, I'm going to be back. I'll be back in the fall." So 14 years later, I got back.
It's kind of like, like when you move to LA, I'll be back. I'm coming back.
Right.
After I get out of school, 32 years later.
Right. So he was right. I was kind of bugged that he said that because no, I'm going to be right back. But no, I was making money, having fun, playing music. So then I went back to school in '94 to go finish my degree. And the idea was to substitute teach, because you could, with a degree and you pass a CBEST test in California, then you can substitute. And I had some other musician friends that did substitute teaching. So if they, that was like a day gig they could not be steady with, but still have an income. And so that was the idea. And as I was doing that, at the church I was going to, there was a Christmas show, really big time show, 40-piece orchestra. They always hired all these studio guys from the players for the orchestra, string section, and so it was a great orchestra to play with. But two of the violinists were elementary school music teachers for LA Unified, and I'd known them for a while. I played with them in some different string things, and I was playing in the rhythm section on electric bass at church, and also playing in these orchestra things on string bass. And so I talked to them, told them what I was doing. They said, you don't want to do that. You want to teach elementary music. It's a steady gig. You get everything that all the other teachers do. And you do, because it's elementary, it's not high school where you have marching band and concerts and festivals and all that kind of stuff. It's beginning instruments, and you do a few concerts a year, and you're done by 3:30 or 4 every day, because it's the elementary schedule. And they said, you should go into that. So I explored that. I was going to school at the time to finish my degree to do, substitute teaching, and looking into it, it seemed like that was the better option, more secure, steady money, the pension, all that stuff.
That, and those words are unfamiliar to most musicians.
Yes. And I remember when I went back to school thinking, Oh, I wish I had done this when I was first going to college. I wish I had gone in as a music major because I would have come out with the same degree in the same amount of time. I mean, as an education major, music ed.
Right.
I was a performance major. So, I didn't really want to teach. But now I recommend if somebody says, what should I do going to music school? Well, get your education degree because then it's there. If you need to ever use it, you've got it.
And honestly, what's the difference in a performance degree versus an education degree? Because if you're going to perform, you get that just from playing with other people.
Right. And you still have to, take the private lessons and pass, they call them the juries, and pass the senior recital. You still have to do all that stuff.
Right.
But then you also get education focused classes on how to teach. My dad was a violinist, and I heard violin lessons growing up every weekend for years. But I didn't really know how to teach how to play a violin. I wasn't a violin player. So the method classes teach you how to teach a class full of violin students. There's do this, do that, do this, and same thing on the flute and clarinet and all this stuff. So, I took all those classes and the education classes, and then I had um, it gave me the skills to be able to do that on instruments. So the next year I got a job teaching for LA Unified.
So
That
I
was
want
97.
in '97. So
Yeah.
so when but I want to get back to your Ray Charles story because you sent me this clip. I want to get to that. But uh, when when you teach in the elementary school, because my daughter now, when she was growing up, is they're teaching this t ta thing. Is
That's more general music or vocal music stuff. And that's not what I do. I do instrumental music. So I teach flute, clarinet, trumpet, trombone, violin,
okay,
cello, all the instruments. And I now here in the Bay Area, I'm teaching middle school music also, and middle school jazz band and orchestra and that kind of stuff.
cool.
Um, so that's what you're talking about is more of vocal teachers and general music
Okay.
teachers do that kind of stuff. It's a way to get students without instruments to sing different rhythms, and that's what that
Mm,
TT ta. It's like eighth notes and quarter notes,
right,
basically.
right.
Yeah,
And I keep telling her, so it's no, it's one E and a two E and a three E,
right, right,
t ta t, whatever that is.
right.
And um, but I guess I that's just what they do in vocal music.
Yeah, it's a method for teaching vocal music. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So when did with this Ray Charles thing? So before you started teaching, then and you were doing what kind of road gigs were you doing?
Well, I was playing around Los Angeles, just doing gigs, anything, symphony things. Christmas time, I was doing Handel's Messiah, and then jazz gig, and then a wedding reception, and I was doing all that kind of stuff. I played for San Gabriel, Civic Light Opera. I think I played with them for about 10 years, doing about 3 or 4 musicals a year. So I was just doing that. Um, and any kind of gig on bass, that's what I was doing. So uh, a friend of mine was playing bass with Ray Charles, and I had some other friends over the years who I'd gone to college with, and um, that had played with Ray Charles. So I knew quite a few people that had gone through that band, and so this friend of mine said he had had bronchitis, and that he was they were going to go to Europe in a certain in the future, and he wanted to get over bronchitis before they went to Europe. So he said, "Can you do this for like a month or so, and hopefully I'll get better and I can come back to the band." So that's what happened. And so he recommended me to Ray, and the band was somewhere on the East Coast, and Ray was in. He would fly back if there was a few days off. He would fly back to LA, and then rejoin the band wherever they were. They'd drive the bus, for a couple days, and then he would come back and join them for the next gig. So I went to his studio in LA and just to play for him. And it was just me and him. He said, okay, let's play a blues. And so we played a blues and we played a couple things. We played, I can't remember, a couple of his tunes, you know, and he showed me a few of them without music, just playing. He said, play this. So I played it. And he said, no, that's play it this way instead. And so he showed me a couple of ways he wanted me to play it. And he said, okay, cool, man. You got it. So he just wanted to make sure I could play.
Oh, cool.
And then I went out and flew out to Atlantic City, and that's where I joined the band.
Wow. Do you think that sometimes also he wanted to just tell you to play it a certain way just to make sure you followed directions or something? You know,
perhaps it could have been that. But, you know, there's people who play his songs and they just play it their own way. And, you know, we've all played a bunch of his tunes and you just kind of make it up as you think it's supposed to go. And then, you know, playing it for him, he said, no, that's cool. But, you know, the people want to hear it this way. Boom, boom. And because it was, I guess, on this album, it's how he wanted it. And he was a leader, so you play it the way the leader wants. So
what a technical leader. I mean,
so I went out and I went out and did the gig, and after about a month or so, I talked to the other bass player, and he said, you know, I'm enjoying being off the road, so keep on playing. So I kept on doing it.
And then how did you end up doing this thing on the Tonight Show?
Well, I had been off. That was when I'd been on the band. It was the 91, and I kind of stopped doing it in 92. And this Tonight Show was in 93, and there was a different bass player who I won't name, who the band had been in New Orleans, and he missed the plane coming back to LA to do the Tonight Show. And after that, they were going to get on the bus and go up, you know, continue their tour in California. And so I was doing a gig. I was doing it. My day gig was a receptionist in a office building in Santa Monica, right on the 3rd Street Promenade there, like second floor. And I just answer phones all day and pay the bills for the building. And
sure,
you know, it was a pretty easy gig. But the owner was cool with, if I had gigs, my boss, if I had gigs, I'd say, you know, I got this thing happen. Is it cool if I take the time off? He'd say, sure. So I was sitting there at the desk, and it was back in the time of pagers.
Oh man, yeah.
Remember pagers?
We had a page.
So I got a page, and I recognized it as Ray Charles' number, and it ended with 911, emergency. So since I had been on the band, and in 91, he always likes to use people who he's played with before rather than try to rehearse with somebody new. So they called me up.
I'm going to interrupt you. Mary Lazarian Operman. Hey,
yeah.
I was working with you there.
Yep. She was working for a different firm. And she was on the same floor. It was like an open layout building. And yep, she was there.
Oh, I just had to interject that because she says, hey, I was working with you there.
Yeah, she was. She was there during that story. Here's an interesting, you know, Dave Gregoric?
Yeah.
He's calling me right now.
What? He's probably trying to remind you of a story to tell.
Yeah, maybe so.
So
anyway, I was doing that gig, and I see this page from Ray Charles Band. And by the way, hi, Mary. Thanks for saying hi. So I called them up, and it was like 11 in the morning, you know, and I was scheduled to work that whole day. I was doing like 9 to 5 or whatever it was. And can you be I call up, hey, hi, this is Nils. Yeah, I got a page from you. Oh, yeah. Can you be at NBC Studios by noon? It's like 45 minutes or whatever it was. No, I can't. What's going on? And they told me what's going on. I said, I'm thinking, I really want to do this, but I'm obligated to do this job. And so I said, well, let me call you back in a few minutes. And so I went and talked to the boss, told him what it was. He said, you mean they asked you to be on the Tonight Show tonight with Ray Charles, and you're asking me if you want to answer phones for the next 4 hours, whatever? He said, go to Burbank, get out of here. So he was really cool.
I know, right? I was like, you're asking me if I...
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So
yeah.
I
Marshall Siskin.
What was that?
The guy who owned the building was Marshall Siskin. I still remember. So that's who it was. So anyway, so I called Ray's office back and said I can be there by probably 1:30, and so I went. We rehearsed. I had to talk to Ray, and Ray was Jay Leno was hanging out in Ray's dressing room talking. So I'm sitting there like I got to talk to him, but I better let Jay finish talking first. And that's. You've heard stories of him with his denim shirt, denim pants. That's what he always wore. That's what he had on,
Wow.
So it was my first time seeing him up close and personal also. So that was fun. And I had heard him play this song, Oh, What a Beautiful Morning, this arrangement that Roger Newman did. Roger Newman was a writer, saxophone player, and he had a big band in LA. And I knew him from those rehearsal bands at the Union and doing some other stuff. So I loved his arrangement. And I heard the band do it on the Tonight Show like 2 or 3 years before that. And from being on Ray's band, that was probably one of my up there with one of my favorite tunes in the book to play. And Jay requested it. Ray had had an album come out, and he didn't play a song from the album. He said, he's got this album, and at the beginning of this clip, it says, here's a special request. And so he played that tune. And I'm like, I get to do this. I jump into the band and play my favorite song on TV on the Tonight Show. Like, what could be better?
Man, that's great. I'm gonna show this clip.
Okay.
And then we can listen to it. I'm going to just give everybody, we can hear the audio. The video stumbles a little bit, but we can hear the audio.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show that. I got to do a little this and that. And okay. And, it just takes me a second to get everything to work.
Cool.
One of these days when I get real professional, I'll hire somebody to do this for me.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
My next guest has been called the Genius of Soul Call. He is the Genius of Soul. It's always an honor to have him with us. This is his current CD called My World. However, tonight he's doing a special request called Oh, What a Beautiful Morning. Please welcome Ray Charles.
There's a bright golden haze in the meadow. Yeah. There's a bright golden haze in the meadow. The cone is as high as an elephant's eye, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. Seems like I heard him say, well, he's a strange boy, Well, he said, oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a wonderful day. I got this feeling. I got everything. Everything going my way. Yeah, that's what he said. Oh, the cattle are standing like statues. The cattle are standing like statues. They don't turn their heads. And they see me right by. But I'm brown fabric. Waking her eyes. Say, oh, what about me? Oh, what a wonderful day. I don't know. I gotta feel good feeling. I got everything. Everything going my way. Everything going my way. Oh, my way. All the sounds of the earth are like music. The sounds of the earth are like music. The breeze is as busy. It don't miss a tree. Get a little old weeping willow. Laugh at me. Oh, what a bit. Oh, baby. Oh, what a wonderful day. Yeah, everything going my way. Baby, oh baby, I want to thank you, little girl, for such a wonderful day. I got a beautiful feeling, baby. I got everything going my way.
Ray Charles. Thanks, boss. Be back right after this.
Oh man. So did you see the comment of like, hey, Nils, the tux makes you look younger?
Yeah, that must be what it is. It couldn't be that it's like, 40 years ago.
Oh man. You know, the mix, what was really good about that, I know the video was jumping, but I could listen. The mix was really good. I could really hear the bass, and the Barry player was really good too.
Yeah. And that Barry player, James Farnsworth, great Barry player from lived in New York. Unfortunately, he passed a few years ago, but man, great. That going on that band when I went on it in '91, it was like going to jazz college because of the heavy jazz guys who were on the band, just hanging out with them. After doing all these, gigs that I was doing in LA, playing shows and casuals and, the private parties and all that kind of stuff, hanging out with these guys who were just one of the tenor players who would constantly practice. When I started the band, he was 63 or 64, and he was still practicing every single day in his hotel room. I mean, these were serious players.
Yeah. And I just want to mention Ruben. There's been a couple of people that said hello. Ruben Valtierra. Did I say that right?
Ruben, yeah.
Ruben, and then Daryl Redwood was the guy, and Steve Turner. Eric Bolvin is watching. Joe Gray.
Cool.
So some people are like tuning in and enjoying this. I want to, when you've been back though in the Bay Area and teaching, you've done some things at the Monterey Jazz Festival and some things like that too, right?
Yes, I did. So the guy in that video that we just watched, the lead trombone player, Steve Sigmund, he was also from Santa Cruz. So there's there was a Santa Cruz contingent in that band since a trombone player named Dan Marcus started doing it back in the must have been the late 70s, early 80s that he started. And actually the drummer Peter Turry had done it at the same time, and his the drummer his brother is Steve Turry, trombone player from Saturday Night Live, and jazz trombone player and conch shell player, and he's also got a brother who plays saxophone. But there's been a Bay Area contingent in Ray Charles band for a long time. But Steve Sigmund has been conducting for various people. He lives in Miami now, and he has traveled around and assembles orchestras. I know he was doing something after 9/11. There was a police officer who was like an operatic singer. I don't know if you remember that. I can't remember his name, but he was doing like the national anthem before some games.
Right.
And him and two other guys started this New York Tenors, kind of like the Three Tenors, but they're from guys from New York. So he had this trombone player from Ray Charles band had conducted for them. He would contract the orchestra and worked with them as well as other acts. And so he's kind of involved in around the country doing that kind of stuff with various artists. And for a time, I'm not sure if it was before or after I was on Ray Charles band, Maceo Parker toured with Ray for a short time. And my understanding is that he would do his thing and then also play. So since they were sharing the bill, he would play with Ray on maybe a tune or two. I wasn't on the band, so I'm not exactly sure how it all worked out. But Maceo and Steve Sigmund, this trombone player, had kept in touch. And since Ray died in the early 2000s, it's like we're never ever going to play that music again. There's a couple of things that were kind of tricky, and I had kept music that I had copied or handwritten. And if I was called to go out and sub on Ray's band, I would practice those tunes just in case they were going to be called. And so I have this music that I'm never going to play again because, it's done. And there was no Ray Charles Ghost Band, not like some of these other, plays. So,
right.
But Steve Sigmund and Maceo Parker had talked about doing this tribute to Ray Charles and using alumni. So it's like the Ray Charles band. So Steve would try to call as many people to fill the entire band out of Ray Charles alumni, and also get the singers, the ladies, the Raylettes, to come out and sing. And Maceo would sing and play saxophone very little. And Steve had called me to do something on the West Coast, the Monterey Jazz Festival, and somebody else was supposed to do another gig prior to that and ended up not being able to do it. So it was playing at the Hollywood Bowl in the summer. They have like a jazz series,
right?
And so it was the Christian McBride Band as the first group, and then Maceo Tribute to Ray Charles as the second group at the Hollywood Bowl. So Steve had called me to do the Monterey Jazz Festival, and I was on vacation for a month. I took my bass with me, but I was visiting relatives, and I was just I took it to, I wasn't doing any gigs. I was kind of playing a little bit, but mostly on vacation. And he calls and said, "Hey, and by the time I was going to be back to do the Monterey Jazz Festival thing in the September when they have it, I would have been off of vacation for like 6 weeks and practiced and got my chops up." But he said, "Hey, this other guy can't do the Hollywood Bowl. You want to do that?" And I said, "Okay." So I was, my family were going to hotels, and they'd all go to sleep, and I'd go in the bathroom and start practicing, and just to be able to do it and cut it. So the first gig after not playing for a month was in front of like 20,000 people at the Hollywood Bowl, following Christian McBride's band.
Wow. Had you played at the Hollywood Bowl prior to that ever? Once.
I had played with Ray Charles band. Ray Charles did what was called symphony dates, and he had done a symphony thing at the Hollywood Bowl. It probably was that same jazz series, and I was not on the band at the time. So there was a different bass player, and the guy who was conducting the orchestra was a friend of mine, and he called me to play string bass. So that was the first time I played at the Hollywood Bowl. I was playing on the very edge of the orchestra, playing all the whole notes, and the other guy was playing in the rhythm section. But it was amazing to just stand there on that stage, and I don't know if you've ever been on that stage at the Hollywood Bowl.
No,
but it's just a wall of people that goes as high as you can see, because it's a hillside that you're looking at. That's where the seats are, right? So it's just thousands of people that it's like a tsunami of wave above you of people. It's pretty amazing to see.
I've been there. I can't imagine what it would feel like. I can only try, but to be able to stand on the stage or be on there and play, experience that would be quite the thing.
Well, it was pretty amazing. And then doing this thing with Maceo, we practiced the day before. The band got together, practiced, and it was Ray Charles guys that I hadn't seen in a long time since the gig had been done, and I hadn't done it the last few years. The last time I had played in Ray Charles band was 1999, and this was 2017 maybe, or 17, I think was when it was. And so it was a long time for these guys, everybody, to not have played those tunes. And Steve Sigmund had contacted people to do transcriptions. We couldn't use the actual library from Ray's office, so people did transcriptions or did things from memory. Some of the people who wrote things had the original copies, and we were able to use that. But playing Georgia, I had never played Georgia with Ray Charles band without watching Ray. Ray Charles he would put his left foot down on 1 and 3, and he would just say, "Watch my foot," with maybe an expletive after it. watch my foot, and he would just rock. And his downbeat, his conducting pattern was his foot, and I would sit, I could almost reach out and touch the end of his piano. And the drummer was right behind me, so he could see the foot as well. So we were just glued to that and watching him rock back and forth. And while we were playing it, I got a little emotional, not in the rehearsal, but playing it on stage. Like, I'm playing his tune and he's not here. It caught me off guard, in that moment in front of thousands of people. It's like, I don't really care about those thousands. All these guys have this collective experience of playing Ray's music without Ray sitting there. It was an interesting feeling. I didn't expect it. And I'd never played his song, his arrangement with some, and Maceo's voice sounded very much like Ray's. So it was odd I didn't have that foot to follow. I just had to play it. I just had to play it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was kind of an interesting, unexpected moment during the concert of those emotions.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about how it would feel, and watching him play, and you painted a good picture, and I was, can see him play, and I can just feel what he was doing. And did it feel, how was his feel? Was it kind of laid back a little bit, or
a
lot?
Yeah.
Or
well, on ballads, it would be really laid back, and sometimes more than others. It depends on possibly what he had in the dressing room before the concert. Sometimes, the line is that you could drive a truck in between each beat. It was so slow. And other times it would be faster, and he wanted you to watch him. There's been some rhythm sections that had trouble with him, and he would, yell at people on stage during a concert, on the mic. The audience, of course, would love the razzing of that poor musician who's now feeling like, this big because he's,
you're right,
yelled at him or whatever. But playing with him, he wanted you to watch him. And I realized after a while that we'd be playing a ballad, and he'd be playing and rocking and doing his motion and playing, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, he'd put the next beat faster. And if you didn't catch it, he would turn back and say, "Watch my foot," And then after a while, it was like, okay, he would do that, and I'd catch it and be right with him. And it's like he turned around, and almost there was like a little smirk, not perceptible, but almost like you could almost see that he's like, all right, cool, they're watching. And there was some rhythm section players, and as a drummer, there are some players who say, I'll keep the time and you follow me. That's the drummer's job. But if you're playing with a conductor, you follow the conductor. And so since this felt like a jazz gig, some drummers had a difficulty doing that. So they were constantly being tested by him putting the beat in a different place to see if they're watching. And he would yell at them behind him if they weren't. And he just wanted you to watch him. And I had done, like I said, all these like 10 years of musicals where you have to follow the conductor and the singers. And if you've ever played a musical, sometimes the time goes funny because the singer misses a cue or they're thinking about their dance or whatever. And you just have to make it all fit. And, it's not metronomic. It can't be like following a metronome. So that helped me be able to follow him and his singing meter, which might not be right, in time, but at least things that were a little faster, they were right on. I mean, he didn't rush and he didn't pull things back, but it was just the ballads that would move pretty much,
They breathe.
Yes.
They would breathe.
Yeah. I remember one rehearsal, and some of the guys in the band would definitely remember this rehearsal. We were at a hotel in France with a day off, so we had a rehearsal. And there's this one thing, and it was bum, 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 bum. So I said, so is that rubato right there? No, it's in time. It's just slow. And so we went through it a couple times, and you just had to follow him.
Yeah.
And he was feeling it in time. It was, there was a little breath of air in between the beats, maybe you could say, and he just had to follow it. And so, it's like following a rubato intro of a singer or a horn player. You just got to follow it.
Right. So, it seems like the drummer's job in a situation like that is the band leader is always right.
Yeah, that's it. And I think the trouble or the difficulty was some drummers felt it was a jazz gig, so you follow me because I'm the jazz drummer. But no, you're following a singer, and he's the leader, and he's playing piano.
That's making me think. Last summer, I went to see Tony Bennett at the Hollywood Bowl, and he's old, and he forgot the words to a song.
Yeah.
And he repeated a verse, and it's okay, but the band followed him. And then he was singing this song, and his phrasing went so fast that he sang the entire line and shortened the tune. Like he just all of a sudden he was like a bar and a half ahead.
Yeah.
And the band just like they just changed it and brought the downbeat in
and followed him.
Almost. I'm going, oh my God, how did they do that?
Yeah.
They just skipped a whole like bar and a half and boom, they were right there. It's like they expected it.
Well, I mean, that's the Hollywood Bowl band. So that's all those great players, who are just used to following. And
and I'm thinking, all the cruise ships, did you ever do passenger talent night?
Oh yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that was also a preparation for doing that Ray gig.
Right.
I remember one night, Pastor and Talent show, there was a lady singing some song, and it was me, the piano player, and the drummer. That was it. Maybe a saxophone player once in a while to play a little bit, but it was just us. Back, somebody would come up. Do you know this song? And oh yeah, we can play that song. Get out the fake book and figure it out and change keys and get in their key. And this one lady changed keys like 5 times in the song. Like she'd be singing a measure, and then the next measure she'd be in another song, and we caught it within a beat every time. We caught where she went, and afterwards, that was what felt successful to us, was that we followed her.
You actually followed it.
Yeah. Figured out where she went and went with her.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So now, but the playing at the Monterey Jazz Festival though too, that had to be really cool playing. And have you done that a few times now?
That was the only time I've ever played on that main stage. I've played on the other stages. I don't know if you ever knew Neil Finn.
Yeah,
trombone player and and drummer and educator and writer. Right. But he had a band in Santa Cruz, and I'd come up from LA sometimes and play with his band. I was in college with him in Santa Cruz, so sometimes I'd come up and play. And we played at the Monterey Jazz Festival on one of those, other venues. But playing with Maceo, it was the next month after the Hollywood Bowl, that second gig, that we did the Monterey Jazz Festival.
So you have reminded me, and one thing that I never really thought about all that much is all of the great musicians that came out of Santa Cruz, Monterey area.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good players.
Yeah.
In that whole area. Ron Appel?
Yeah.
He said
trumpet
hello.
Player.
Yeah. He says hello.
Hi, Ron.
So when school starts, what's the plan for what's your school system? What's their plan for school, and how's all that looking for you?
Well, we just found out last week that we're going to, like with the state of California, going to do distance learning, which means Zoom classes. We ended the year doing that on a kind of it wasn't full time. Like I would see my students like twice a week or 3 times a week, and then give them assignments, and they were supposed to do it. But this coming up in the fall, it's more they have to be accountable. They're going to be graded. In the spring, it was credit, no credit grades for that last end of the year, but we're going to be doing grades students are going to be required to come to class on their device, whatever it is. I'm in a small school district with only 7 schools, and I teach 5 elementary schools and 2 classes in a middle school, and I have a middle school jazz band. And so we're still going to be doing all that, and we're just working out the how we're going to do it. We're working out the details now. Typically, it would be summertime mode, go back to school in the middle of August, but I was meeting with some of the other music teachers yesterday. We were texting today. We're trying to figure all this stuff out now. We're doing a lot of, there's a program called Smart Music, and they have, you can log onto their system. They've been around for years, and you can get into their system, and they have probably 70 or 80 method books and a huge library of band and orchestra material of all levels. And at the end of last year, we were able to play music. You log in as a teacher, I get assigned a song that we've been working on through Smart Music, and then the students can do a code and access that piece. And I'll say, okay, so practice this, and then we'll have a test in a week, this measure to that measure, and they have to be able to play that, and it's recorded by Smart Music, and then I can hear it. And it also gives, it listens to it, and it gives the student green notes if they play it right correctly, or red notes if they play it wrong. It's not always accurate. There is some difficulty of the computer speakers, or if they're using a iPad or a tablet or something like that, that it doesn't always read correctly, but I can hear it. So that's the big thing. I can hear it. There's another thing called Flipgrid that a lot of teachers use, and it's been used for a while by teachers. And you can record a video and talk to your class, and then they can record their own video back. Like, I know some elementary teachers used it to say, okay, read this chapter and then record a Flipgrid of what you thought about it. And so they do that, and then the other classmates can see that and then make a comment. So like a thread, but it's like a thread in a text or a Facebook or something like that, but it's videos. And the students can comment on each other's video.
In Burbank, they're using Twitch and for something, the new Google thing. They're using it to do stuff, but they're also using Google Classroom.
Yeah, we're using Google Classroom a lot. Yeah, also.
And I haven't really used it. Mackenzie knows, but is it good? Does it work well?
Oh yeah, it works well. A lot of the schools have been doing it prior to this whole thing.
Okay.
So the students, some of them know it already, and it's just a place where they can get assignments and respond to the assignments. And if they check their Google Classroom account every day, they'll see it. But it also sends them an email. One thing that elementary school students aren't used to is checking their email every day.
Oh man, yeah.
So that was kind of a hurdle to, get over. So it's just having them get used to that and checking email or check your assignments every day and see what's up there. So I post things to Google Classroom. Sometimes it's a YouTube video of an orchestra playing a song, and listen to this and tell me what you think about it. I use some music theory stuff from a certain website that's music theory, and then playing pieces as well. So we're going to try to get them playing as much as possible. With a latency of playing together, it's almost impossible to do that. But they can play. If I play something on the piano, they can play with me, and everybody mutes themselves, so only they hear my piano and they hear themselves.
Yeah, that works. If you try to listen to them back, it's kind of trouble.
Yeah, it's chaos.
I talked to John Gove last week, and he was saying that Jam Kazam kind of works if all of the students are close to distance.
Yeah.
Has a lot to do with latency.
Yes.
Like if they all use the same server, like in a small town and everybody's on the same server or something, or close, then it actually, the latency isn't all that bad. But
yeah. And also that, there's people talking about different things, like most people these days are using Wi-Fi, but if you use a cable, what's it called? Not the Ethernet cable plugged directly into your router, then you don't have that extra latency,
It makes a big difference to stay off of Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
One thing that I've done a couple of times, and it's almost that we've been at an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's like, when you start talking, something, you never know how long you're going to talk.
Yeah.
But sometimes when my Wi-Fi starts crapping out on me, I will switch to my cell phone, because the cell phone gets a better signal and works better than using my internet sometimes, because my internet goes down. If everybody in town and on my block is on the internet, my internet speed just slows way down.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it just doesn't work. So, cell phones, especially with the faster cell phone service, sometimes that works better. Just anything but Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah. And most everyone's using Wi-Fi.
Right. Yeah. So, well, Nils, we've talked, like I said, an hour and a half, and it's been fast. I love the stories about Ray Charles. It was great to revisit all of the circus stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we ought to do with all the circus guys, is get back on and just have all of us on, tell circus stories.
Yeah. It's interesting where everyone's gone after, in the music world, the various things people have done after that, right. Tom playing with Tower Power, and, other people doing lots of other things, writing music. I remember Jim Norton playing in the circus, and now he's, composer, and gone on to do a lot of stuff in the Bay Area.
Right. And you remember, Tom has stayed in touch with Ed Harris, the guitar player. And apparently Ed Harris moved to Germany not long after the circus, and became a huge composer for film and TV over there in Germany. And I'm like, man, who knew? Who would have thunk?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So Nils, I want to let you go and get back to your family, and you guys are staying healthy and safe, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're wearing our masks and washing our hands.
Not much different that we did when the kids were first born.
Yeah, right.
Just quickly, when my first child was born in 91, the first thing I learned was wash my hands before I touch the baby. That was the first thing the nurses told us.
Yep.
Wash your hands before you touch the baby.
Yep.
And I'm like, why? Because you don't want to get them sick.
Right. That's it.
So anyway,
it's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science. Wash your hands. Don't breathe on people.
Yeah.
And it actually helps. The thing is I think sometimes people think that the mask is to keep you safe, but that's not the idea. The idea is to keep it from going to others.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's just the whole thing, and why it's still easy to spread. As a matter of fact, we should have maybe put on our masks. For this.
It's funny. My wife told me that at our school, she works at the same at one of the schools also, and in the spring when we were still doing school, but on Zoom meetings, they had this thing called School Sing every Friday, where all the elementary school kids would get together in the gym or the cafeteria and sing. and they give out awards for that week. And so they started it up again on the Zoom meetings, and you can see all these 100 kids on, the grid of the Zoom, and this one little kindergartner's there with his mask on because his mom said, you get with those kids, you better put it on your mask.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah.
All right, Nils. Well, best of luck to your school year. I hope it all goes good. And
Thank you.
Great talking to you, and give the kids a hug. And at some time in the future, we'll all get together, and it really would be fun to get all of the guys together, either on Zoom or if we can ever get together in person. It would be fun to just sit and be old men talking.
Have a reunion. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, man.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate you asking me to do this. It was fun.
Oh, it's great fun. And, a lot of people, you have a lot of friends watching you.
Oh, cool.
I mean, a lot of people tuned in and said, yo, hey, Nils.
Who knew?
Who knew? And thank you for joining me. I'm going to take us out with a little bit more big band music.
All right. Sounds great. Take it easy.
All right.